Welcome back to an introduction to missions. Today we're talking about language and culture. Now, language and culture are really key in order to share the gospel with anyone, disciple them, and see an indigenous church started in their context. Now, language is work. It is just plain work, and culture can be very confusing. But with a little bit of help and handles on how do you approach this, it is doable. Let's get started. Welcome back to an introduction to missions. Today we're talking about language and culture. As we look at language and culture, you may ask the question, why should I learn the language and culture? Well, it's important to see that language is the window into the culture. In Daniel chapter 1, verses 3 and 4, it says, Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. You see, they were going to take these young, bright young men and teach them the language and culture, or language and literature, in order to teach the culture of the place and the worldview of the place, basically to indoctrinate them so that not only would they be able to speak relevantly to the people in the place, that they would do that in the way that helped them understand the worldview of the Chaldeans, of the Babylonians there. And so we see knowing the language is essential to communicating the gospel. And so that's why we're there, to do that. But if we don't understand the culture, how can we do that clearly? And so understanding the culture is going to help us do that. So language and cultural competency is key to effective cross-cultural work. We need to be able to speak to the people in a way that helps them take the gospel and understand what it means in regard to their need of a Savior and to God's provision in Christ. Also, language and cultural competency is key to thriving in a cross-cultural context. Not only does it give us the purposefulness in the work that we came to do, but also it's very lonely when you're isolated because you don't have any friends, because you can't speak the language, where you are bored because you can't interact with people. And so if you want to thrive in a cross-cultural context, you've got to learn how to talk to people and learn what's appropriate in that culture. As you do that, you will thrive. Now you may ask, well, how do I learn the language? There are several words of wisdom, some tools I like to give you as you would consider learning a language. The first would be divide and conquer. Basically, break the language learning down into context. Like, how would you introduce yourself? How would you get around town? What's the local travel? What about shopping? How do you discuss what's the price of something? How do you go back and forth and barter for things? How do you have a telephone conversation? How do you hang up? How do you say hello? You'd be surprised at culturally how you do that in different contexts. How do you talk about the physical world around you? If you want to go to the park or go to the mountains or go down by a river, how do you sow those things? How do you talk about that? How do you talk about your health? You get sick overseas. You want to be able to say, hey, my stomach hurts and here's how it feels, and be able to understand what's being said to you. You want to be able to talk about the climate and the weather. You know, is it hot and cold? What's the weekend forecast going to be? As you divide up the language into different contexts, in a sense, you create the different boxes in which to discuss topics, and then you can be selective with your vocabulary, selective with your core sentence structure. Other contexts would include like daily life. What do you do in the mornings? You get up, how you get ready, eat breakfast, go about your life and your day. What do you do there? Stuff around the house, domestic vocabulary about washing the dishes, sweeping the floors, just different things you do there. And then most importantly, religious context. How do I talk about the gospel and the basic things there? And so as you can see, there are other topics you can put in here. You can put sports in here or other hobbies in here. But as you divide up the language into small boxes or contexts, then it allows you to divide it up into areas to study. And in each of these areas, you'll want to choose what are the key words, nouns and verbs there. What are the key phrases that are used here as a start? And so you want to divide that up. The second thing you want to do is you want to prioritize what to learn first. And you're going to base that on frequency and importance. So if every day I'm going to say good morning to everybody, my name is, I want to do that because I might as well learn it because I'm going to say it every day to people as I walk down the street. If they're going to ask me certain questions, I want to be able to answer those questions because everywhere I go as a new person, I'm going to be asked that. So the quicker I learn that, the less stress I have in that area and the easier I am going to learn that because I'm going to say it every single day. But I also want to make the priority of what's most important, like where's the bathroom, or how much is this, or I live on a certain address. I remember visiting Thailand, and I didn't speak Thai. I couldn't say my name is whatever in Thai, but I did learn a couple of expressions in Thai because I knew where a location was, where maybe a store was, or where the place I was staying was at. So I learned how to say that in Thai enough for them to know where to take me to. And so that was important. To get home was important. So that helped me in all the context I have, which contexts are most important, and within those contexts, what would I say most frequently, and what's most important for me to be able to speak in those. And then thirdly, you want to be able to set goals that you cannot fail. What do you mean by that? That's like learning a new word a day versus learning 10 new words a day. Now, I've seen some people set such lofty goals that they could not keep, and so they got behind. And if you get behind, say if you're learning 10 new words a day, you get behind a couple of days, pretty soon you're down 30, 40, 50, 100 words, and you feel overwhelmed. Now, if you set a goal that you can reach every day, when you reach those goals, then you realize, hey, I can add on to my goal. I can overachieve my goal, and you make progress. So set goals you can't fail. And then use the glue approach to learning a language. What is the glue approach? Well, the glue approach to learning a language has 4 basic parts. The first part, or the G, is get what you need. Remember, need is based on a context and what is most frequent and important in that context. So I want to get that. So if I'm going to introduce myself, what do I need? Well, I need to be able to say, my name is, I am from, and then maybe what am I doing here? If I want to say good morning, I want to say that. In Indonesia, I remember there were 5 different times of the day. And so depending on what time of the day, you wouldn't just say good morning, good afternoon. It would be good morning, good mid-morning, good afternoon, good late afternoon, good evening. And so you want to learn those things. So you get what you need. And getting that means you, with a language helper, write these things down, formulate some goals that you can reach, and then you want to learn what you get. That means you want to study it, you want to memorize it, you want to practice it, you want to act it out, you want to engage in it, you want to really try to get a grasp on it, and then you want to go out and use what you learn. So as you establish a regular routine, you maybe want to take a cheat sheet with you, but you want to speak to as many people as you possibly can, because you're trying to actually learn all that you have gotten and solidify it. Now, how long do you need to speak? Well, I would say, whatever's on your cheat sheet, keep speaking until you don't need it. And then what you'll do there is if you use what you learn, you'll solidify that in your learning, and because you created goals that you can achieve and you can't fail at, you feel like every day you're making a little bit more progress. Now, there always is some adjustment, so you want to come back and you want to evaluate what you used. You want to determine how things went, determine whether the amount learned was balanced. Did I overachieve and I needed more content, or did I try to add too much and I just kept failing? I couldn't remember everything to say. I couldn't not get rid of my cheat sheet, and so I was really trying to do more that I could actually learn and gain the skill in. And so based off your evaluation, you want to make some plans and decide what you need for tomorrow. So the next day, based off your previous day's evaluation, you go get what you need for that day. Once again, it's based on the context, what's most frequent, what's most important in that context. As you get that information, just learn it. Learn it until you think you have it. Now, the thing is, if you don't go out and use it while you think you may have learned it because you've memorized it, you don't really have it until you use it. And so you use it on a regular basis. Now, what you will find in this approach right here is because you've based your learning goals off what is most frequent and most important, you're going to find that you're going to start achieving progress. And because you're using that language, those sentences, those vocabulary words on a frequent basis or on the basis of their importance, you're going to get it, and then you've got it. Then once you know how to say my name is, or good morning, or how much is this, pretty much you're going to get that, and then you can add more language, deeper sentence phrases and vocabulary to go deeper in the language. But you want to always keep evaluating so that you are having this tension, not too much and not too less on your goals. Now, what are your language goals for your apprentice term? Remember, apprentice term is your 3-year term in order to help you walk through what does it mean to become competent, not only in the language and the culture, but also in the work itself. Well, the IMB uses the American Council on Teaching of Foreign Languages scale on what to learn, or the ACTFL scale. And so there are 4 levels of language learning. There's the level of novice, which is a beginner level, obviously. Then you begin to gain a little bit of competency. You'll be able to say a few things, and that's the intermediate level. Then you progress there to more advanced, more paragraphs, more competency in a wider range of context, being able to speak in multiple tenses, past tense, present tense, future tense, and then all the way to the level of superior, where you're not translating in your mind, you're just speaking because you know the language and you can speak on most topics with richness of vocabulary and verb usage and complexity of sentence structure. So when we look at the ACTFL standards, within the standards of each of those stages, novice, intermediate, advanced, superior, there are at least 5 things that you want to look at to make progress in. Those 5 things include fluency, pragmatic competence, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. So when we say fluency, we're talking about the flow of the language, the amount of preparation needed to say what you want to say. And so can you speak it right off the cuff, or do you have to think and formulate, how do I say this? Pragmatic competence is basically the ability to get past obstacles in communicating what you want to communicate. So basically, you want to say something but what the way you're saying it, the sentence structure or the vocabulary you're saying in, does it communicate? So how are you circumventing that in order to be able to communicate? So like in English, when we want to say something, they don't understand it, we just say it in a different way because we pragmatically can get around to make sure we understand what we want to say. Vocabulary means a range or amount of vocabulary. And so it's not just having a word, it's having multiple words to create depth and breadth to our sentence structure. And then grammar, the use of grammar structures, basic and complex structures, high frequency and low frequency structures. What do I say how do I say certain things in certain contexts? All those things are important, and that goes from when I need to speak slang or when I need to speak formal, honorific type sentence structures. Do I understand those different paradigms, verb paradigms, and sentence structures? And then pronunciation, basically the ability to accurately reproduce the consonants, vowels, the pitch, the stress, the intonation, so that they can understand what I'm saying here. So at each of these levels, the novice level, obviously these goals or these things are very low. There's minimal exception for memorized phrases, and so I'm not very fluent. All I can do is tell you what I memorized, but I had to think about that. I can't circumvent the language. If you don't understand me saying how much is it, then I don't have another way of saying that. The vocabulary, really I'm just translating the English words I know, and I have lists of words I'm learning, but still it's very limited. Same thing with my grammar. I'm still thinking in my English grammar structure and not necessarily in the structure of the host language. And then once again, my pronunciation is I sound Western. And many people may not know what I'm saying. They may think I'm actually speaking English, even though I'm speaking in their language, because it sounds like English, even though it can be grammatically correct, but it still sounds like English. And then at the intermediate level, there may be some pauses, some reformulation, some hesitation, because I'm still trying to think how to say things. It doesn't come automatically. And pragmatic competency, I can do some rephrasing, but still I really only have one or two ways of saying most things. My vocabulary may become intelligent, but it's still limited. I still have limited accuracy in my grammar. People can understand me, but my sentence structure is not very complex. And then my pronunciation is still limited as well. People start to understand me, but usually it's because they've seen foreigners who have learned their language, and they give me a lot of grace. And then we move to the advanced level, where we start to get some flow, where I can just have some automatic responses of what I need to say, and I can catch myself when I've said things wrong. I can reword things, but I have to think about how to reword them, because I have to think about what other words would help me say what I want to say. My vocabulary is getting broader. I can be a little bit more descriptive in what I want to say, but my range of vocabulary, it still reaches a point where I can't think of more than 5 words on that one vocabulary word. My grammar, once again, is becoming a lot more active, more fluid. It's a little bit more complex, but you can still tell that at times it's still a Westerner trying to speak in the language. And then my pronunciation is where people can actually start to hear me. Other people who aren't used to dealing with foreigners can hear me. I still have an accent that's not native, but my clarity is getting there. And then superior, obviously, I can just speak what I want to speak with ease. If people understand me, I can confidently know how to circumvent and come back around and say that. My vocabulary is the right word in the right context. There's no real major errors in my grammar structure, whether I'm speaking slang or speaking formally in the language. I know how to talk, and everybody can understand me. I still may have an accent, but people understand me in every context. Now, in the end of your 3 years, what is the goal? Where are you trying to reach in regard to the actual standards? Is you're trying to reach the advanced level in fluency, pragmatic competency, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. Here's your goal. Now that may seem like a high goal, like how can I reach that? But your primary mentor is going to walk with you and help you so that you gain this competency. So at the end of the 3 years, because you put the time in, you can do the work and you can do life in that context because you've gained competency in these areas. Now, what does that look like in regard to ministry? Well, at the novice level, obviously we can't do too much. We can maybe say some phrases about God. We can give out tracts. We can prayer walk. We can start to make relationships. We might be able to make some identifying statements that hey, I'm a Christian. God loves you, things like that. But we can't do much, and that can be very frustrating. At the intermediate level of language, we can begin to start praying in the language. We can ask questions about their faith that leads them to seek questions from us. We can begin to share our testimony in a very concise way, maybe share simple Bible stories and basic truths in the language. And then our relationships become deepened where they kind of like to be with us because we can actually interact with each other. At the advanced level, we can ask more questions about their worldview. Our prayer can be more deeply in the language. We could actually teach a Bible study. We could walk through a track with other people. We could share the gospel with others. We could do some basic discipleship teaching once we get to this level. And then superior, pretty much we can do most everything. We can go deeper in discipleship discussions, deeper topics and issues. We can engage in more deeper discussions with strategic partners about the work and how to engage the work. We can develop more materials in the language because we understand how it works and what words help us communicate that. We can go into deeper theological topics like the Trinity and the Incarnation and such, and being able to preach and teach in the language, it just gets easier because the language just flows. Now, obviously, once again, the goal at the end of the apprentice term is to get at least to the advanced level. And with time and intentionality, you can get there so that you can be active in the work. And so learning language and cultures is so important. It's important for you to thrive, but it's also important for you to be effective in the work. Well, that's going to do it for the day. Next time we'll talk about when we're in the midst of the throes of language and culture, we will begin to experience culture shock. What is that? How do we deal with it? That'll be the topic of our next class. Until then, have a great day. Well, that's going to do it for the day. Now, you may be thinking, how will I ever be able to speak that well and understand the culture to that depth? Well, it just takes time. It takes time in daily going to it in order to get it done. Don't worry, your language coach will help you evaluate where you are and help you come up with strategies on how to make progress, but it will be worth it. How will they hear the gospel if you aren't the one who can communicate that in their language in a way that they can only hear it but receive it and respond to it? So just remember that as you're going through the throes of language and culture, that the end is so they might hear and might respond. Until next time, have a great day.